After 2 weeks off, although it felt more like 1 week, quite frankly, Inside LAFC, the Max and Vince podcast is back. Vince LaRosa, Max Bredos. Before I bring in Vince, a reminder to subscribe, download, rate, and review. I'm not going to tell you again. Actually, I will.
Yeah, you will.
Maybe a few more times. This microphone, does it feel a little bit low?
I don't know.
Okay.
Does it feel low to you?
Make sure you subscribe, rate, review, and download the latest episode because we're getting into an exciting summer with a lot of games. I'll get to call a lot of games as well. But how have you been, Vince? How are your 2 weeks off?
The soccer of summer. My 2 weeks were good. I still worked a little bit.
Of course.
A lot.
You get a little time off somewhere?
Actually, a lot of it. Yeah, family came. We can finally see each other now that people are vaccinated and being good. So it was good to hang out with some family. But I did miss it.
Of course.
If I don't have
You're used to talking about stuff, you miss it when it's not there.
If I don't have these conversations,
you go a little batty,
explode. And I try to talk to Cody about it, and she's like, "Please don't, please don't."
I spent a little time this weekend in the high desert, the low desert. Low desert, very hot, 118.
It's gonna get hot. It's gonna get hotter this week.
You couldn't take it. So I went up to Joshua Tree, where it was a little warmer, 105.
So wait, so you went to the desert, you're like, it's too hot. So you went somewhere else.
Let's go. Where else can I go? Let's go to the other desert.
That's funny.
How sick and tired of you are of people bringing up to you, hey man, I saw you on the 110 freeway?
It has not gotten old yet, although it is a bit terrifying because I'm like, why would you think? They're like, I almost crashed my car. I'm like, in a good way, or
trying to take a photo of it of you and Connor on the big tower.
Big tower
alongside. I was in traffic and it stopped right by the tower, so I was looking up for a good 10 seconds.
You just shake your fist at me. You're like,
I was getting a little. You're looking down at me. I was like, stop it.
I mean, you've been on there.
Have I?
Yeah, I think we probably put you and your broadcast team up there at some point.
Not my image.
I keep saying we. I was with some LAFC people the other day.
My image has never been up there.
And I said we, and I was like, apologize, you guys.
I'm a little envious because I want to be up there on the tower at some point.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you and I will take some photos.
My friend Ed Quinn has been on there because he is the lead of the Oval on BET, and BET has obviously rented out that space, so I see him as well. So it's getting annoying. So all these people I know are on the tower, except for me.
I would like it, actually.
I know Carlos Vela. He's on there all the time.
Larry Friedman, if you're listening to this, please make sure that Max Bredos is the last person that makes it on that tower.
That would be a shame.
Just hold out till the very end, and then we knock the sucker down.
We have a lot to talk to about the club, but before, have you watched a lot of football on?
A lot.
Euros?
I have the TV's just on. It's like wallpaper at this point. The TV's just on, and just have to flip between the channels to keep some kind of football game going at all hours of the day.
Yesterday, which was Sunday, we had 3 Euro games, and immediately at the end of the last Euro game, Copa America took over, which was pretty interesting and unique. Copa America doesn't have, obviously, the atmosphere of the Euros because there's no fans. It feels far away. But
just the fact that it's getting played seems like a success for them.
Correct. Unbelievable.
We can debate over whether or not it should be happening, but the fact that Brazil won was in the first game. There was a Brazilian team on the field. There's a Neymar on the field. Like, all these things we did not think were going to happen until they actually did happen. And then Brazil did what they do. Fortunately, Venezuela had quite a few COVID cases, a couple in their actual team and like quite a few in their traveling, whatever you would call it. And
this competition affects LAFC because we have 2 players down there. Mm-hmm. We're going to get to the entire international rundown. Some interesting development, good ones for the LAFC players that are with their international team. We're all enjoying the Euros. I'm enjoying, not really enjoying, but I'm getting up earlier because by necessity to watch these games. Get up around 6, so I end up halfway through the first half of Scotland, Czech Republic today.
Wow. Did you go right back to sleep?
No, it was actually pretty good. It was a good game. The worst game, there's some bad games. The second half of Ukraine, Netherlands was good. First half was, there's a lot of negative football as we've gone to see here. But that'll get better. Because 16 of 24 teams get in, so you can afford to not put your best foot forward. Yeah,
but you think you would use that time to try some things?
I agree with you. I'm built-in excuses, and people say that. I go, I understand. But I guarantee you that 10 or 12 of the 8 or 10 teams that are being very cautious and defensive, most of them will not qualify for the round of 16 because of it at some point. Because they'll find themselves, let's start playing now.
Well, what about
it's too late.
What about Copa America? They're only going to cut 2 teams.
You don't want to be one of those.
You know, there's going to be. Look, Venezuela by necessity. One, because of COVID, and two, it's Brazil. Probably had to play kind of negative, but go for it, man. I mean, there's only two teams. There's only one team in each group going out. You might as well just go for it a little bit.
You get a win, you're probably good. One thing that happened in the Eurozone I want to talk about, because I think there's some important soccer lessons or whatever, or protocols that you do if something like this ever happened. And it was Denmark, Finland. I'm sure you've all seen it with Christian Eriksen, where he had cardiac arrest. It's now being reported. And I just think from our industry perspective, how that all unfurled. I was watching it, and as many people, just getting queasy watching it. But there were certain things that we say, do we do this or we don't do this if something like this ever happened again? The training crew obviously are heroes, a remarkable what they were able to do. Some of the teammates, from what we hear, positioning the trainers and medical staff to do everything they had to, and the reports are frightening because they said he was gone.
Right.
Which you read that, you're like, oh my goodness. But these guys and girls are magicians, what they're able to do. And that's not the right word, I'm sorry. But they're angels from above to come in here and go through that protocol without hesitation to do that. So obviously, just to reinforce, to have the best training medical staff possible, which I'm sure there are the Euros, at most clubs as well. And I'm talking a lot here, but I mean, there's obviously that. There's a situation of the images. While that is happening, do you keep the camera on, not exactly on what's happening close to Eriksen, but on the field, maybe getting reaction shots, because there was discussion. It was an international feed, but we saw it here at ESPN. Get the cameras off of that, or what do you do? Speculating injuries is another one, and then restarting the game. And I'll bounce off you, but of all of them, I think there's a debate to be had, not obviously with the medical staff, that is 100% consistent across the board. But the restarting the game, I think most people would agree, was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean,
basically on the way the Danes responded, because they looked, and so did the Finns, but the Danes looked really, really affected.
Of course. I mean,
yes.
You even had players that weren't at the game that were talking about it. Romelu Lukaku saying, he cried for hours before his own game that he had to play in. And yes, Belgium went on to do well. He scored 2 goals. He dedicated them to Christian Eriksen, but it was tough for him because he's like, I spend more time with this person than my own family during a pandemic, with the craziest year ever. And he spent so much time with this person. Your point about the medical staff, it's, the big point is the no hesitation, right? They run into
There's no hesitation.
They run into a situation where they have to act fast. They have to be decisive.
Everything's cataloged. They know.
Yeah, they just go to it. And I can only think how amazing that is from my own experiences, having seen that in person and now seeing it a couple times on TV. I freeze. Like I can't do anything. I can't move.
Yep.
And I don't, I got really emotional after. Like I don't cry. I don't do anything. Like I just kind of stone faced because I don't know where my emotions just go everywhere and I don't know which one is the right one in the moment. But for the medical staff, incredible. Simon Kjær, who supposedly helped clear his airway, make sure that his tongue had basically recognized it. And I saw your tweet this weekend saying, I should relearn CPR.
Yeah, I'm serious about that.
I think that's incredibly important. And I'm seeing all these things that, one, it's actually somewhat very easy to learn CPR and to learn how to do it. But the fact that it could take you 15 minutes to learn it and maybe save someone's life. And
time.
Yeah, in these instances where you have to act quick and you have to be decisive, that's incredible.
But just to interject, everything I'm also hearing about the introduction and the invention of the defibrillator and what it can do, and basically just to, like a car, restart your heart, but how effective time and time again it is. The
name escapes me, but I believe it's either in Serie C or Serie B. The same type of thing happened. Obviously, this is a lower leagues. A defibrillator is not cheap. They didn't have one. The player didn't make it. So the chances of you making it, at this point, we should all learn CPR and get these to as many places as we can, because it's CPR and the defibrillator are the two things that saved his life. Absolutely.
And the reason I tweeted that is because I've now been involved in 2 instances where I've seen something of that nature. Once on an airplane, and like you, I froze because the gentleman was in the row behind me, and I heard his wife screaming, and then This woman whose name was Sarah, I forgot her last name because I talked to her. I said, "You are amazing." She leapfrogged over 2 rows, got him into the middle of the thing. These people go, "We got to land the plane." She goes, "No, don't land the plane. Right? Emergency land." Resuscitated him. I was like, that's it. Without that action, we're on an airplane and we are landing, an emergency landing, and we're probably sending someone to a morgue.
Yeah.
So it was, I'm glad. That's what I get back to, and I'm sorry if I interrupt you, but that's why I get back to watching it all, because I think I want the images to continue. Maybe not of someone getting resuscitated, but the stadium, or just to think and let that moment soak over you, so that the lasting image for me is I want to learn CPR so I can do something like this, because it happens so frequently. And to rush that off to go to a studio, I say, nope, let that simmer. If it's too hard to take, warn the audience, and then they leave. And this might be a losing conversation, but I just think that really led to that being such a visceral moment for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you, as a broadcaster, I mean, you're trapped in a moment where you can't do anything.
Really say much.
Yeah, you can't. Well, one, you can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
You're just kind of like the rest of us, kind of a prisoner to the scenes that are being beamed into you. Because to your point, UEFA has that feed. So for those 2 commentators for ESPN, they're sitting there and they're literally.
Efa Koku was Derek Ray. They're
being shown basically pictures that they have no say over. They could very well have been thinking, please go to commercial, please dump out of this. Not their call. Absolutely not their call. And it's not even not their call. It's not even like next door. It's not the director next door. That is happening from UEFA's headquarters, which I believe are in Switzerland, and they're making that call. So that's got to be crazy. But the other point you made is, you can't say much. So how do you? Is that in that moment? Would you say that it is good to espouse the things that maybe we just said? Learn CPR. These are the things that are helping people. And then obviously you talk a little bit about the scenes. You have to remind viewers that keep coming in throughout, hopefully it's not a long process, but you kind of remind them, okay, this is why you're not seeing what you imagined you'd be seeing if you turned on this channel at this time. But I was just wondering, obviously this is lowest of the totem pole, but now that we know Christian is okay, I feel like we can talk about this. What would you, as a broadcaster, what do you feel is the right thing in those moments?
I think to your point, reminding folks of reminding for new audience, because in a situation like that, you have to know. Because I even texted some people, go, "Hey, you got to change this. You're not going to believe what's happening." I think the worst possible scenarios is occurring on TV. So, and I think back to those moments like Jim McKay during the Munich Olympics with the Israeli athletes, and just being on top of it and giving information. It's a tough spot. I think you have to go to different layers, and you have to just acknowledge. You probably have to repeat yourself a lot. It probably sounds frustrating, but you maintain what you see, and you convey that across the board. And if it's just saying the medical staff is amazing, I think we all have to be really a little more prepared because of this. Not that the commentators weren't. I wouldn't have been prepared for it, but I don't know if it's the best way to go back. And I remember in a Confederations Cup, Mark Vivian Foe of the Cameroon, and maybe that was brought up, but this happened to him in a game against Colombia, and he did not make it, and that's happened before. And I think you go back to similar situations, but the last thing you want to do is assume anything or speculate anything. It's a very fine line you have to path. You shouldn't be on there too long, but you should be on there to at least convey that message and pass it on to the next, because you're not just going off the air. This is the biggest sports story. It is a sports story, unfortunately, that's happening at that moment, and probably for the last few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's cool to ask you about this, because like I said, when you're in that booth, it's a different world. And I know a lot of people have their ideas of how they think TV should be made and what we should be doing in that moment. There's not always a right answer. But I think that it makes a lot of sense what you said, is to be present and to try
and comforting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to do that. You have to be as comforting as you are. And I go, look, these are very difficult images. We're doing it together. We're hoping for the best, but this is part of this game. This was unexpected. We are now living it together.
Yeah.
So
there's going to be no easy segue from.
No easy segue. We're going to do our best, but I think it's a good story because Christian Eriksen is alert and with us, and
that's what makes it a lot easier to talk about. Is the news sense has been comforting. Positive is not the right word, but he's stabilized. He's been talking to his teammates. I believe I read reports from his father and agent said that he was joking a little bit with them about. He's like, I feel good. I just and so that's what makes it easier to talk about in the end.
This has nothing to do with that. And again, I after what I said, I shouldn't say it, but you also think about the burden these athletes are under. It's games and games and games and games, and sometimes you need a minute, just to pick your head up. And I don't know. I'll segue regardless, very abruptly.
Yeah, do your broadcaster job. Let's see it. Okay. Make that money, Bredos.
So LAFC is going to be back here June the 19th. Against the Dynamo at home. Stadium is opening up. So let's wait to the LAFC games because I have a little trivia for you.
Okay.
So someone said to me, we had a lot of LAFC and former LAFC players in action on international break, World Cup qualifiers, friendlies, and Copa America and Euros. So there is a former LAFC player on a Euro squad. Name him.
I botched it. I already botched it.
Actually, I could argue that there are two former LAFC players.
This is to pull back the curtain. Max sent me this, and I kind of had an idea, and then I looked at it, botched it because he is there.
Say the one. Nico Hamalainen. Queens Park Rangers. Our
you have
former
not shared
fullback.
this with me. What is this mystery player?
This is a stretch because he was an LAFC player for a matter of minutes.
Okay. Yuka
Raitala, who was part of the 2017 expansion draft.
Oddly enough, they play on the same team.
Right, both Finnish. Finland is Team MLS. You have Robin Lut. I didn't say that. Lut. Robin Lut, who's of Minnesota as well.
I still don't think you said it right.
Whatever.
I'm kidding. I don't know.
And there's another MLS tie in there, a former MLS player. Regardless, but
there's Raitala, Hamalainen, Robin Lut.
Raitala. Just to finish the story here.
Did the forward from Montreal, did he link up with them?
I got to remember. We're going to a Finland.
I know. I brought up Montreal. I must be going deep.
It was. I think there's but Raitala plays for Montreal. Mm-hmm. 2017 December, drafted in the expansion draft, and then traded with Raheem Edwards,
who's now back on LAFC
for Laurent Simon.
Who would have been like my third or fourth guess because maybe like all of a sudden
the Belgians
are like, hey, we need you, bro, like just in case, because I mean, Belgian defense is Vertonghen, Alderweireld, I can't say his name, Toby
Alderweireld.
Yeah, so what's that, like 34 and 35? And
remember the World Cup?
Laurent is probably 35.
We were like sweating with Laurent Simon at the Performance Center, seeing if he was going to make this Belgian team, which ended up making the semifinals.
Right.
Of a
and
World
he had
Cup.
to go because he would have been the first off, like that provisional list had somebody got injured. So he had to actually, even though that's got to be the worst.
It's got to be the worst.
Hey, we need you to go. Well, I'm on the team? Well, not quite. But if someone gets injured, you're first off the boat. Like
that stinks. You don't want to be that guy.
No, you don't. But you have to handle it with like some kind of grace. I remember
but he was back.
Adrian Rabiot was like told for the World Cup, he's like, they're like, you're going to be first. He goes, F you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And France goes on to win.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a good way to handle it. I understand the disappointment, but you probably don't turn around and just say F you guys. You got to basically wear it kind of, especially especially for France. I mean, we're not talking about some.
Because you might get a medal.
Yeah, we're not talking about some random nation.
But here you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about the guys that are in front of you: Paul Pogba, N'Golo Kanté. It's okay, Rabiot. You could probably play second fiddle to those guys.
Laurent Simon was back by the end of the World Cup because I remember we'd be at the Performance Center and you'd hear this big scream, and it's because Belgium scored in one of the games.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Like, ah! Belgium scored. Yep. Congratulations, they're up.
Went bananas.
So let's go over the pretty lengthy list of LAFC players to participate in the International Week. Closest to home.
And the bigger, not the bigger point, but to bring it full circle, this will affect the game on the 19th. I believe it has to. Like, one of the names you're going to say is Mark Anthony Kaye, who plays today.
Tuesday.
Sorry.
And then we'll know the 8 teams in the final qualifying stage for
which
CONCACAF. Canada played Haiti over the weekend at Port-au-Prince, which is a difficult place. Canada got the result. Mark Anthony started. He has been in that 11. He's missed the prior game, but they already threw.
A lot of games in a short window.
He's put a lot of games. It's been really good just to reinforce what Mark Anthony Kaye is doing, and this is going to be a benchmark moment for Canada because they got the Davies and David.
The Daves. That's awesome.
The Daves.
That's a throwback. I don't know if anyone's gonna get kind of the.
Hey, I'm Dave.
Yeah,
oh
hey,
yeah,
Dave.
I just thought about that. I said that.
I'm Dave. Oh, I thought that's why you said
Brew,
it.
yes.
Yeah, I thought that's why you said it. Strange Brew is a great movie.
And they're Canadian.
Again,
I
that's
did that
why
by
I thought
accident.
you said that. Of all people.
I'm gonna pitch it to.
Speaking of random movies, can I just go on a weird rant for a second? I watched a movie on Hulu with Nick Cage. It's called Willy's Wonderland. Nick Cage does not speak in the entire movie. It's basically a horror movie.
Is it a new movie?
Yes, it's a new movie. It's a horror movie where Nick Cage has to go and live in basically what is like a Chuck E. Cheese, and the animatronic
sounds good so far.
animals come to life, and Nick Cage basically assassinates all of them, but does not say a word in the entire hour and 30
Should we watch
movie.
it?
And for Nick Cage, yeah. It's Nick Cage just being like, he got the script and he goes, okay, I'll do it if I don't have to speak. And the director and producer were probably like,
Done.
It's Nick Cage. and people are going to expect him to be weird. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
He's weird.
Okay, sorry.
My wife made me watch Mayor of Easttown, which was pretty good. Have you seen
Was it
that?
good?
But it's like what you're asking yourself at the end of this is like, this town is the most dangerous place in America, this little suburb or township of Philadelphia, and they drink a lot of beer. But it was okay. It was good.
Yeah,
it's good. It's definitely worth watching.
A lot of Yingling in there.
Yingling and Rolling Rock. And I was driving me crazy because when movie makers have to work on this, when you have a beer and you can tell it's not cold, and the sound that it makes, it drives me bananas. That's not how you consume beer. You want to make it look frosty cold. Same with the wine. When the wine looks like fruit juice, I'm like, what are you doing? Put real wine in there. Don't drink it.
And whiskey looks like iced tea.
Stop it.
Max Barrow, let's go back to the old days of Hollywood where everyone was drunk on set.
Yes. Yeah, drink. Spit it out. But don't put fruit juice or lukewarm beer in front of me. That's not realistic. Okay.
That's what you get. You brought up Strange Brew. Didn't have the reference, but figured it out. And now this is where we are.
Hoser.
So Mark Anthony Kaye, Canada, Tuesday. I don't know for sure, but I would say that has to probably put him out of contention for the 19th.
Yes. And then there's a game on the 23rd. First game on Bally Sports against FC Dallas. Our first midweek game on Bally Sports. Very exciting. And we'll get to that in a moment.
Here's my infamous question to Max whenever I know he's calling a game. Who is your +1 going to be? Do you know?
No.
Okay. Well, good.
Well, we're going through some changes.
Yeah, there's some things going on.
We got some things going on.
Yeah.
So let us continue here. Kim Moon-hwan starting for South Korea. They're playing Lebanon and they're playing Turkmenistan. So there's early stages of World Cup qualifying, but he's in there, which means has to be closer to health.
Yes. Yeah, the biggest thing was it was reported he was removed from one of the games for a health reason. I don't know who the actual source was, but clearly he's back and he's starting. So, the biggest thing is him getting minutes, high leverage minutes under his legs. I mean, he needs that more than anything. But just like Mark Anthony Kaye's, another one that might be in doubt. I mean, I would think he would have to quarantine coming from having traveled.
Wait, you were saying June 15th? It's all.
I know, but
is open season.
What if he comes back before that? No, June 15th is open season for the state of California. The player protocols have not changed.
Damn.
Not yet. Right. I keep asking.
I am telling you that a lot of stuff's not going to change when that date comes around.
It's
not going to look much different
Max
than it does now.
Max and I are fighting over this, and you're going to be wrong.
I'm just telling you. I hope I'm wrong.
Who's next on the list?
Before I go to South America, I'm going to just give a little shout out to Josh Perez. Former LAFC player, scored a goal for El Salvador, and El Salvador is likely going to join the winner of Canada, Haiti, and Panama in the final 8 for CONCACAF.
El Salvador is not an easy place to go to.
No, El Salvador's, and they got Zavaleta, the Toronto FC defender, so they've upgraded there. Canada's good. Haiti's got some good players. Panama's developing some good young players I've been noticing. CONCACAF, baby. Here it comes.
I know, I love it. We just watched the Nations League final, which was great. And it was obviously Mexico-US, and everyone's like, oh, these are clearly the two best teams.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could say clearly anymore. Best teams, probably. Clearly, not so much.
Before we move on to South America, I do want to mention we have Sam Stejskal of The Athletic going to join us a little later, so we'll talk about South America. We'll talk about the marketplace, which will come into view as well.
Yeah, let's do transfer talk.
We'll do transfer talk.
That's what everybody wants.
For sure. And there's a lot brewing, or at least a lot swirling.
Probably. I mean, I would not be surprised if we find out from Sam that like there's going to be a lot going on.
Uruguay, Brian Rodriguez did not play the last World Cup qualifier. Did not come off the bench.
Nope.
They will play Friday, June the 18th, their Copa America opener against Argentina. Argentina would have played a game already, but there's 10 teams in South America, so someone has to sit out 4 days. What is this going on? It's the weirdest tournament ever.
Two teams of 5, 4 from each group go. So I just imagine being that one of the bottom team in each group where you're like, I mean, can't we just stay?
Yeah.
Like, I think should have maybe just done like a 2-legged knot. Like, just do something crazy. If the tournament, I don't know.
And the reason it was like that is because they were supposed to have Qatar and Australia, and they pulled out back in February. In hindsight, a very wise decision.
Smart idea.
Best decision of the year.
Yeah.
So he hasn't played, and Chiqui Palacios with Ecuador did not play in their opener.
It was not even on the bench.
It wasn't even on the bench. Yeah, so that's a little discouraging.
It's annoying.
So we started hot, and we kind of simmered out.
Yeah.
We want both these guys to get games and minutes because that is a proverbial shop window.
Yes.
So, Brian Rodriguez, Almeria are not going to get promoted. They got knocked out by Girona. So, in all likelihood, he's not going to a second division team in Spain. So, if he's on the market, then
he's back on the market.
We need to raise stakes here.
Yeah, and you're playing for a team like Uruguay, who is routinely defensive. And if he can put a goal or two against it, it's considered high leverage competition because you're playing against the Argentinas, the Colombias, the world. That's definitely going to raise your price. And there's still teams.
I don't know if he's going to play a lot. I mean, maybe he's going to because the midfield of Uruguay, because the guys like Arrascaeta and Nahitan, these guys are, I think, all ahead of him.
I've been looking at some of the way they've been stacking the team. It looks like a slightly different Uruguay too. It's not the traditional like 4-4-2. They've had like 4 central midfielders in there doing some interesting stuff. You
have Suarez, Cavani. It's a very strong team.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Did I miss anyone?
Jonathan Rodriguez.
Oh,
he's been playing up front with Suarez after.
It's just a really loaded team. It's nothing against Brian. It's just a loaded team.
Yeah.
So I think we covered our internationals.
Yes. Should we talk? Should we bridge to Sam Stejskal about talking about another Uruguayan player?
Well, let's talk about
who's possibly on the market.
And
actually, not possibly. He's definitely on the market.
It was a good source. Was it the Telegraph?
Yes.
Which is good. So if you get something from the Sun,
yeah,
proceed with caution. Telegraph's probably.
Unless it's Brexit news, don't go to the Sun.
Okay. Excellent.
Sorry, did I go too hard there?
No. I like it. That's the kind of pod we want to become.
Right. The anti-Brexit pod.
So Diego Rossi, and it was Tottenham Hotspur and Everton, and it's no secret. We know there's going to be interest. There was some. We assume there's some interest from Italian teams. For me,
I assume it because he has an Italian passport, and for Italian teams, they get 2 slots for non-EU players that don't, but he would not be classified as that. So it's like a slam dunk. You can get technically a non-EU player, but he has the passport. So I don't understand why. I would be very surprised if there's not an Italian team or 2 that is also monitoring him because it makes sense.
And what's a little bit strange about the Tottenham and Everton reports, or if we can call them that, is neither of those teams has a coach. Ancelotti left to go to Real Madrid, and Tottenham Hotspur obviously had the caretaker, Jose Mourinho, now at Roma, and they're looking for a big splash. They both have guys identified, Fonseca at Spurs and Nuno Gomez, correct, who was ex of Wolves. He's done a great job at Wolves.
Wait, Gomez?
No. Spiritu Gomez.
Yeah, Espiritu.
It's Nuno Espiritu. Nuno Gomez. I'm thinking of the...
Yeah, like the player.
Gomez.
I was like, hey...
So
I like Nuno Gomez back.
So I don't know. The coaches, obviously, you want a coach who's on board with that too. Not that he's making those decisions.
Yeah, but the way it works, I mean, I would say for young talent like Diego, 23 years old, their sporting director is in place. That's kind of England has now gotten on board with the sporting director, so he kind of sets the standard. I would say that shouldn't be that. And I know it's a lot of money to most people, but 10 million is chump change to a lot of these, especially. Ooh. Well, I mean, at Everton, it's
10 million pounds sterling.
Yeah, 10 million pounds. It's a slightly big purchase. I mean, even for Tottenham, who's generally pretty tight with the purse strings, but that's not that much. And for a young player, yes, if he was a 28-year-old, you'd probably want to have the coach because you're like, hey, we're going to spend big money on this 28-year-old. Are you going to play him? But for a young guy, I mean, there's still going to be value, and you would think a young attacker, any coach would want, a little bit of investment in young players. So I think that doesn't matter quite a lot, but I would say for both managers, it would be an interesting place for him to land. At least it's not Jose Mourinho is going to be at Roma, and I still think he can maybe do some things. Yeah, he somehow needs to figure out that he's now in the modern game and has been for the past 10 years. But other than him, there's not many coaches where I'd say they're so staunch in their ways that Diego Rossi should absolutely avoid it.
I would like Rossi to go to a team that has a European calendar ahead of them, because I think part of the value of Diego, and again, we're not saying he's going anywhere, but these are things we want. It's no secret. We've heard from the reports from The Athletic that, the interview with John Thorrington about this is things that they deal with every day. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see it where you have a lot of games, because Diego has proven that he can just eat up minutes, run, put these teams in a good position that would make him even more valuable. I think if he gets that where he has 2 games a week, which I think he's capable, he's held up, even though he's a smaller player, he's held up physically. And I think where you have a lot of minutes where you always worry about a team that's kind of, like I would say West Ham, for instance, just a Europa League team, a guy where you go, okay, he's going to do it, so we don't have to sacrifice too much over the weekend in our league play, and we can still remain the same team. I think Diego Rossi would be a very valuable guy for a team like that. West Ham, if I'm breaking that rumor right now, by all means,
please don't do it. When I was going through my Rolodex of who's the next manager on my list that's like Jose Mourinho-esque?
David Moyes?
Yeah, you know what? I think he did change a little bit.
It's really
but
weird.
That West Ham team
sometimes
very much
he changes and sometimes he doesn't change. He goes, let's go back to normal. And it's like you see 2 different teams in a game.
Look, as long as he's learned the players' names.
Who would be...
That was a stick at Sociedad. Didn't know the players' names.
Yes, that's right.
But he could tell you who's gonna show in the horse race. He loves the horses, loves the ponies.
Like you love hockey.
Oh, see, there hockey reference. See, people, is that it? Do you got more? You got anything?
I got nothing on hockey.
I don't even know who's still in the playoffs.
The Islanders.
In Montreal.
I don't know.
Okay.
Is Montreal in the Western Conference now?
I don't think there's conferences anymore, because Canada was closed down because of the COVID stuff. But the bigger point and the first step would be the more games there are, the more chances.
No conferences because Canada shut down?
Well, no, they had to rejig it because the Canadian teams could only play Canadian teams. They can't travel to the United States.
So this whole season's been compromised.
Yes. Our whole world has been compromised, to be fair. But
not like this.
Back to Diego Rossi. I think
should have moved Montreal Canadiens to Florida like the MLS teams.
and play at the Worldwide Sports Disney Complex.
Disney World.
Max. No, okay. But Diego Rossi, your point with a team that's in international competition is, if you go to a team let's say Brighton. Brighton's a good team, and I think he could do some things at a team like Brighton, but we saw Moises Caicedo go there, who we both liked as a player. Has not played. Because they're just in league games, just in league fixtures. Coach has to go. They're fighting a battle to stay up. Just has to go with what he knows.
That was a mistake. They should have played him.
They probably should have. But probably doesn't want to rotate as much. And sometimes it's just getting that chance. Some guys never get a chance because there's no reason to. But having extra games in the schedule, and Diego's one that trains day in and day out, doesn't take days off. I think he would be a good person, a good forward, a good young player where you'd say, hey, let's give you a shot in this game, and he could do some things. He might get into a lineup and never leave.
I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm just going to give the schedule because this is what's coming up for the rest of the month of June on my sheet of paper here. LAFC Houston, Banc of California Stadium, June the 19th, 8 o'clock kick. That's on TUDN, and we'll be at full capacity. We've talked a lot about that, so we don't want to get in there. We know we're going to expect to see people shoulder to shoulder. There's some protocols. Go to LAFC.com, check everything. So it's a smooth process to go in. You still have to, it's still not back to normal. Mm-hmm. There's full capacity. LAFC, FC Dallas the following Wednesday. That's on Bally Sports with the team.
With Max Bretos and
Mark Rogantino.
Plus one, we don't know.
Yes, I should know.
It's not me.
I should know. I really am. That's me. I live in the moment. And then June 26th, Sporting Kansas City, LAFC. That's a game on ESPN. And then a busy July where it's going to be midweek. I think 3 midweek games.
Yeah.
So.
And that's all you. Max Bretos, the summer of Max Bretos, July.
Yeah.
Starts in July.
I was supposed to coach my son's basketball team. And I was excited because this was going to be the springboard to the UCLA job. But now I have to tell him, I'm telling the organizer, I can't be at this game. I go, you better find someone else or these kids are going to be unattended.
Yeah. You can't. you can't teach the triangle offense in that short amount of time, you know?
I do the rectangle offense.
Oh.
It's
you do the old Hoosiers four corners?
Don't let them catch watching the paint dry. Do not put Dennis Hopper over me, okay? Whoever makes those videos, all right?
Come on. Your impressions are the best. It's the best part of the show.
Okay. Maybe not that one. Yeah. It was too brief.
But while we go to break, think of one for Sam.
Okay.
That you could do.
Sam Stejskal of The Athletic, are the great team at The Athletic who've appeared here on Inside LAFC, Max and Vince podcast, coming back. We'll talk about the market. We'll talk about the restart of Major League Soccer. Subscribe, rate, and review your favorite podcast. We'll be right back. We are back here on Inside LAFC, the Max and Vince podcast, and joining us now for the second time, Sam Stejskal of The Athletic. The first time you joined us, Sam, it was in the middle of the pandemic. I looked at you, you looked at me. We were like, what are we going to talk about? I think we're talking about MLS is back, but much different circumstances, and we're very excited to have you back again.
Well, I'm excited to be back, and I'm excited to be back in these different circumstances. So thanks, guys.
Can I just say, Sam, I remember exactly what we were talking about. We were talking about the tournament getting started and the fact that you and Paul had everything before stuff came out, and Max and I both had emails in our inboxes saying that if we speak to the media, we will be fined $1 million.
And yet you did it anyway. You still had me on.
It's why I have a different gig now, Sam, and I'm still working off that $1 million.
I know, yeah. We're paying off the $1 million bit by bit here. We're doing like some odd jobs here and there to make ends meet. But it was worth it.
It was worth it because it's a compliment to what you guys do, because Max and I are big proponents of this sport, and this league in particular needs exactly what you guys are doing to kind of push that forward, to push the page. So we've now washed you up a little bit, gave you a good ball washing, so now we can do like the hard questions.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all of that. I appreciate it.
I've never heard that analogy before.
I just made it up.
That's great. I'm going to use it.
Clean. It's great.
Yes. I just to follow up with Vince, we've seen it work in the NFL where there's insiders that break the news before anyone else. We've seen it with the NBA and Adrian Wojnarowski, and obviously ESPN lives off the leads that Woj gives them, and certainly we have it here with Sam Stejskal and Paul Tenorio. Sam, how's your MLS break been going? Are you watching football like the rest of us? Are you getting ready for the restart? A bunch of everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Because the MLS has been gone, but really, like, the sport is obviously not. I watched all the games yesterday at the Euros. I'm 2 for 2 so far today. About to be 3 for 3 here, and got some Copa America on tap tonight. My wife is out of town, so I've just been like binging.
And wives think we're up to no good, us football fans. They think we're up to no good, but we realistically are sitting with slippers on watching football, trying not to leave the couch but maybe one time.
Exactly. So it's been really nice. The Euros, I think, have been really fun, of course, with the exception of the not fun thing that happened with Christian Eriksen, which was scary and terrifying. Thankfully, he seems to be doing better. But yeah, and then you throw on the U.S. national team and Nations League, and it's been a pretty busy break as far as breaks go.
And it's just going to get busier here.
Yeah, I mean, the MLS schedule is going to be a monster in the next couple of weeks. Max kind of teed you up for this before we went on air. Max and I are homers, and we're shameless in that, and we get told that every day from our fans. Max, you are not an LAFC homer, although you do enjoy a little black and gold, but. Give me your.
Sam is not an LAFC homer. You said Max.
Sorry. Okay. Max is definitely. Sam,
I
you
call
are
it
not.
like I see him.
Sorry.
How dare you not call Max a homer?
I know.
Can you imagine? I'm just going to hand out my resignation here in a few minutes.
Sorry,
Thanks a lot,
I apologize. my brain is ever look to tell you where my brain is. I got told that I need to be harsher on the Galaxy because someone was like, "What are you going to get a paycheck from them?" And I was like, "What is going on here? These people have gone crazy."
It's a bit
odd. But no.
Take.
From your perspective, like if you could summarize what you think is kind of perplexing the rest of us and why this LAFC team is not where they think they should be.
Well, you guys are obviously closer to the situation than I am. The games that I've seen of LAFC, and I've probably seen about half their games, they've played some good soccer. It's just lacking in the final third, right? And being without Vela for a good chunk of the season will do that. But this team doesn't really have a striker, right? They don't have a top-notch number 9. And I'm curious to see if they try and correct that in the summer window, particularly if Brian Rodriguez gets moved on and they have an open DP spot available to them. It's worked in the attack for a couple of years now. But even last year there was Bradley Wright Phillips, and before him Diamande and Christian Ramirez. They had forwards, Marco Serena, if we're going all the way back. They had guys that fit that mold, and now you have Musovski, but it's just less experienced, right? Less proven, and he's done some good things. But if you could get a real stud in there, then I think LAFC can kind of go next level. Overall, I'm not really that worried about them. I think it's still a talented team. Bob Bradley's still the best coach in Major League Soccer. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. And I expect them to start hitting on all cylinders or more cylinders pretty soon. But, while having said that, keeping an eye on it, right, to see if this drags out a little bit longer and the cause for concern goes up.
Sam sounds like as big of a homer as we do.
He's saying all the things. Let the record show that Sam said that Bob was the best coach in MLS, not us, which we normally get, again, just dragged for. But it's a good point, though, that you bring up, though, Sam, and we've been saying it as well, is like, yeah, we think this team looks good, and the numbers seem like it could get better, it could trend in the right direction. But the biggest, overarching, the sword of Damocles over our head is how much longer can we keep saying that? Because at what point, Sam, because the next two games are at home. Yes, there's one on the weekend and then a midweek, which is always tough to get 6 points, but you want that. What point in the season would you like draw a line in the sand and say, this is absolutely a problem?
I mean, it's weird because part of me wants to say, after like a dozen or so games. But then the other part of me is like, this is MLS. And if you get hot over the last month, it's fine, right? If you're treading water for the rest of the time. So I'm really not that concerned, and I'm not going to be that concerned for a while. I would say give it at least to the 17 game mark, the halfway point of the season, before you start freaking out hardcore. But even then, that doesn't mean anything's written off,
How have you seen the makeup of this schedule? Because it was obviously a very traditional start, and teams, you got a good look at what they were doing, and now we have this break, and now teams will be playing, most of them 2 games a week, and it's going to get intense, and a lot of these teams are not going to be playing with the full allotment of players, a variety of international duties, and I think MLS should be applauded for creating an international break. They obviously can't, under these parameters, can't take a month off, but they were able to take this too. So how do you see this second half of the season, not just for LAFC, but the other MLS clubs?
It's going to be really interesting because of schedule issues, right? It's going to be really, really brutal on basically every single team. And I think the rhythm of last year, even though it was a shortened season and even though it was a long off season, I think the fact that the rhythm was different probably plays a role in some guys getting hurt. And I think you're going to continue to see that over the second half, or not even the second half, the last 3 quarters of this season, when the games are coming twice a week, basically, or three games a week, basically every single week. So that's going to be difficult. Depth is going to be tested all around the league. I think we're going to see some players that we aren't talking about right now emerge into bigger, more starring roles. I think we'll get to see some young players taking opportunities. And I think this is really going to be kind of a story of survival, because I think we're going to have a lot of injuries, probably to a lot of key players, just because of the congestion. And then you throw, of course, the weather this time of year on top of everything else. It's going to be tough for these guys to get through. And I think the team that kind of stays healthiest and the team that can rely on their depth, those squads will be rewarded.
A quick follow-up, and we don't know because we talk about the breaks and the depth. The the Gold Cup, there's so many tournaments. The Gold Cup squads are going to come out. We expect a lot of MLS players, certainly for the U.S. team, and I would imagine from the Central American teams, Mexico, we heard Chicharito. How big of an impact do you think that will have, or is it bigger than, we think it's going to be bigger than it is?
No, I think it'll be significant. MLS is doing, I think there's a week off for the start of the Gold Cup during the group stage. So, that'll mitigate some of it. But I would imagine that U.S. team is going to be almost all, if not all, MLS guys. So that's going to be a big loss for a bunch of different teams. Canada, I'm assuming, will have a lot of MLS guys, maybe Mark-Anthony Kaye. I'm not sure what their exact plans are. We'll see what happens with their World Cup qualifying game against Haiti here this week, and if they make it through. But yeah, a lot of MLS guys there, and a lot on the different countries from Central America too. So I think it will be a big impact. But But that tournament, there is that slight break. It's not a tremendously long tournament. But for the U.S., expected to make a run all the way to the final and see what happens there.
Yeah,
You'll have some teams that get hit pretty hard with that.
Yeah, we're supposed to be in Vegas for that, so we can go enjoy the USA-Mexico final. Vegas, kick it up.
That'd be nice.
Knock on wood.
Let's go. That segues us nicely. International tournaments are always a time when players are in the shop window, although it always drives me nuts because if you're going to buy a player based off of a weird small sample size, it's probably not the best idea. But fans want to talk about the transfer market. Obviously, July 7th and opens back up for MLS. Perfect timing for everything kind of culminating for some of the tournaments. What are you hearing? What are you hearing? Like you said, these are condensed schedules, but there's a lot of logistical challenges to getting an international player from where they are to here. What are you hearing about this market, this window? Are we looking at a lot of comings and goings? What are you thinking here?
I think there will be a decent amount of moves. Nashville has been linked to Ake Loba from Monterrey, which I think could be interesting. The primary window was slow because of COVID and because of all those things you just mentioned. And because tournaments this summer and guys not wanting to move ahead of national team tournaments and all of those different things. And I think the summer with more, there goes my dog.
Didn't like
Sorry
that.
about that.
Didn't like that Nashville rumor right there.
No, not at all. Sorry, guys. I can press on if that's
yes.
cool.
Yeah,
But,
no, of course.
so I think, talking to GMs as during the slow spring and winter window, they were like, yeah, the summer should be more active. The summer should be more active. I'm not completely sold that it's going to be like a huge bonanza. The secondary window is usually slower than the primary window in MLS. It's only about a month long, opens on July 7th. But I think you'll see some teams make a few DP moves. One that I'm looking at in particular is New York City FC. They have an open spot. They just went and signed a young Brazilian for a lot of money, Thales Magno. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. And then I think LAFC too. That's one of the bigger questions: is what happens with Rodriguez and what happens after that if he moves on.
And we talked about in our first segment, Diego Rossi. There's some reports from the Telegraph that he is in the sightlines of a couple Premier League teams. If MLS teams aren't going to get reloaded, we've seen it a very slow market. We hear a lot the money's not there from some European clubs or South American clubs looking to reinforce. Do you think that money will appear on that end in July?
I think in certain leagues, in Europe, I think the spending will be there. Certainly in the Premier League and then among the top clubs in other leagues. But the market is still a little bit depressed. You look at like what's happening in France, for instance, with the TV deal falling apart over there and having to rebuild that. And some big clubs like Lille, who just won the league, going through tremendous financial difficulties, right? Inter Milan, who just won Serie A, they're going to have to sell players because of financial reasons, right? So it's not all the way back yet. But I think the more time passes, the closer it'll get. And I think there will be a market at some point. The tough part is like, you're going to have the market for the top guys for the most part. Maybe no one's spending $200 million on Harry Kane, right? But the big players, there's still a market for them at the biggest teams, and those teams can still afford to spend money. It's more the secondary clubs, right? Like in Everton, that was linked to Diego Rossi. How much can they really afford at this point? Right? Can they drop 20 million, or is that now 10? Right? And that's kind of where MLS lives, right? That's the space that MLS players are in at the high end. And so I think there will be some kind of ramifications there. I think LAFC has dealt with those with Rossi and maybe with Rodriguez already.
When you bring up those secondary teams, and you make a good point, they're kind of the teams that MLS is looking to sell to. If I'm selfishly an LAFC fan and I say, man, but I don't want to lose Diego Rossi in the summer or Brian Rodriguez in the summer when normally prices are better. So maybe that wouldn't be the case, you're saying, possibly, because Everton maybe can get a couple months of fans in the door or something, or do you still see that the summer window? Because a lot of fans don't quite understand why a team would have to send some of their best players away in the middle of the season. Like it's hard to square that,
So to explain that broadly, the summer is the European offseason, of course, right? And more teams are in the market. There's more roster turnover, right? More teams have money available to spend at that time. So you have a bigger market of available buyers for players in MLS and any other league around the world. Unfortunately for MLS, that happens to fall right in the middle of the season. So if a team wants to make a title run, that's going to hurt you. And there's no real way around it unless you have a replacement lined up right away. And even if you do, that new replacement will have to be onboarded. Maybe he'll fit, maybe he won't, maybe he'll adjust, maybe it'll take him a year, right? So if you're losing Diego Rossi, to use the example, right, that's going to sting. And there's no real way around that. But the market is bigger, right? On a case-by-case basis, if Everton's really, really wanting Diego Rossi, right? And they're like, okay, we have this offer now for 10 million, but in January we can up it to 15 because we're going to have a lot more cash coming in the door through tickets and through all these other things. Then sure, the market might be better, but there's no guarantees that they'll still be in January, right? Or that they won't have moved on to another target, or that the coach who is replacing Carlo Ancelotti, who I don't even know if they've hired anyone yet, but
not yet.
Forgive me on that. Who knows if that coach will even still be there, if he'll still be interested. It's just completely unpredictable, right? So if you have, I think the prudent thing for any club to do is to say, okay, if we get a price at this offer and it meets our other conditions in terms of, qualitative things that we're looking for in a buyer, then we move, right? And that's that. And I think, it's not a situation where you can really afford to wait around, because you never know what's going to happen in the future.
And that's why it's good. It's more than one club kind of poking their head around, because it feels like everything has to fall in line for this to happen. But it also feels like not everything perfect's going to fall in line under these circumstances. So you're going to have to push out. But I would imagine teams are still going to be a bit reluctant. And that's why we saw, with all these MLS players going on loan ahead of the turn of the year. But I just hope that common sense and the pockets get a little bit deeper here, and we shall see. But we won't really know. I know you also talked about you wrote about the young DPs. Is that that's a new arm of MLS business. Do you see that being activated a little bit more this summer, or when do you see that maybe kicking in?
It's already started to kick in a little bit with the U22 signings. And for those who don't know or don't remember off the top of your head, first of all, congratulations that you don't live in this world and that you have a life. I'm proud of you. Second of all, basically what it means is teams are allowed to sign up to 3 players who are 22 or younger, and they can sign them for any transfer fee that they want, as long as their salary is under $612,500 this year. And they hit the cap at $150,000 or $200,000. So basically it's encouraging teams to go out and buy young players who then can later be moved for a profit. I do think that'll continue to kick up. We saw NYCFC just make one of those signings, I think last week now. So I think that'll continue. But we've seen a few teams take advantage already. Atlanta already has 3 on their books. I think more teams will get into it as more time passes. Those are interesting to me because those guys they're not necessarily guys that are going to come in and make an immediate impact or a big impact right away. So you might be spending a lot of money on them, but in a lot of cases, they're going to be projects for the future and pretty speculative signings, even in some cases.
Just like with the New York City FC situation, they spent a big transfer money to Vasco to get Talis Magno. If you want to get a player of that level, you're basically going to have to outspend these European clubs who are also looking to get players younger over there. Is that fair?
Yeah, and there's going to be a premium for MLS teams, right? That's part of this too, is that, all right, if you're an 18-year-old Brazilian or a 20-year-old Brazilian and you have Bayer Leverkusen and NYCFC coming after you, right, you're going to need more money to go to NYCFC because you still want to go to Europe. The end game isn't MLS for these guys. So if you're going to add a step between your ultimate goal and your current position, there's going to need to be some compensation for that. And that's going to come in the form of salary for sure, but also potentially in the form of transfer fee, which, can go to agents and the club and all sorts of other shenanigans. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting. Salary, obviously, transfer fee is where we talk about, the big figures, the 7, 8, 9 figures. And then age is capped, but then salary is capped at such a level that actually somewhat inhibits what they probably wanted. That 600,000 it's a decent number, but it's at a weird, for me, that's a weird level to cap it at if you really want these prospects, like you said, because 600,000, yeah, but I could probably get $1 million, in England.
Such an arbitrary number.
I think it's a good illustration though, because you're not going to be able to get a Diego Rossi under this initiative, right? That guy will have to be a DP still. And I think that's fine. This is for the next tier of player, right? A guy, he might end up being better than a DP, right? But maybe there just isn't as much available data on him, right? Mm-hmm. So Santiago Sosa for Atlanta, he falls into this category. And he's largely been pretty good, and he's shown some good things for Atlanta in terms of what he's able to do on the field. They were able to get him, clearly a very talented player, on that kind of salary because he had like very little experience as a pro, right? So that's part of this.
That's risky. I mean, that's pretty risky. I mean,
it is risky.
It's a roll of the dice.
I'm really curious to see what this initiative turns into, because a lot of teams I think are going to be making moves like that. And I think you're going to see some hit and some pay off fantastically, but I think you're going to have a lot more misses than you have hits in this category.
Sam, this is absolutely fantastic information. I know our listeners are a lot smarter as a result. We appreciate you coming on. By the way, Jorge Mas saying he could see Lionel Messi coming to MLS, particularly Inter Miami. Would you see that one day?
Yeah, man, it wouldn't shock me.
Is it before 2027?
Not on that weird contract that we saw where someone else is going to be paying and somehow the money's going to loop around. Like, what is that?
I don't know. Ask Blaise Matuidi and his agent how they did it. Maybe we'll have an idea.
That's a book.
Actually, that's a good idea. I need to get that as my agent.
No, that wouldn't shock me. I mean, doesn't he have a place in Miami? He's said he's open to it. He was in the video welcoming Miami to MLS. Like, I think I would actually be a tiny bit surprised if he doesn't end up there eventually.
I would say this, Sam, question, right? As someone who grew up in Miami, if you're as wealthy as Lionel Messi and you have a place in Miami, when you go to that place in Miami, generally you want to go when you're not working. So I don't know if that, but who knows?
It's a different level of pressure, you know, it's a different level of work. It's a nice transition into retirement for him. And I'm not saying you wouldn't take it seriously, and I'm not saying he wouldn't do amazing, because he would. But I think it's fair to say the pressure in Miami would not be the pressure in Barcelona for Messi.
We're taping this, so we'll know the result. But you said you were 2 for 2 today in the Euros. Who do you have in the third game? Or what's your score?
Man, I think I'm going to go with a draw. Sweden's going to pull a little bit of an upset here. They're tough.
I like the Swedes. Good shout.
They're tough. They're organized. They're difficult.
And who's going to score for Spain?
Exactly. I'm not high on Spain, and I'm
a Juventus fan, and I'm not high on Alvaro Morata. So that's just to tell you something.
Is anyone high on Alvaro Morata? Like ever?
He's the weirdest player I've ever encountered.
And his wife are. I don't know, but somebody has to believe in that man.
I've never had a more hot and cold player in my life watching. And when he's hot, he is the best striker in the world. When he's cold, wow, two different people.
It feels like he's gonna just be the Spanish Giroud eventually. You know, that's kind of
what a label.
Well,
with worst hair. Yeah. But to be fair, that's a high bar.
Yeah, but he'll take a World Cup and a Champions League medal.
Sure. Yes, for sure.
I know, and then we'll be like, what a disappointment.
Yeah,
this guy.
What a loser.
I wish you could. I mean, you're just listening to Sam Stejskal. I wish you could see him, because we have him on our call here, and he looks like a young Michael Hutchins with that hair.
We might be able to work this so that he's in video.
Who that is. But
that's a very high compliment.
You know who Michael Hutchins from InXS is? Oh man,
he was.
No, I know InXS.
Well, the lead singer of InXS.
He's all right. I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Don't get into the end. It's a little dreary.
Actually, maybe don't. The way it ended for him wasn't great.
It didn't end well. Oh, sorry. I just banged my mic again. Sam Stejskal of The Athletic joining us here on Inside LAFC, the Max and Vince podcast. We look forward to having you again, Sam. Your stuff is fantastic. We all get a lot smarter listening to you.
I'm not so sure about that, but thank you, Max. You guys are fantastic too.
Thank you, Sam.
Vince, you're fantastic. Go to your sports book and bet on a tie for Spain and Sweden before noon Pacific time. We'll be back again next week, and we'll have 2 games to look forward to. LAFC is back in black, as I like to say, and we'll be joining you here very soon.